Today we are going to see the module number 3, lesson number 2. Here we are going to learn about the Docker build. So what is a Docker build? Last time we have seen we have Docker file, how it works, and from Docker file we used to generate the image. So to generate the image we need the Docker build command. So what is Docker build means? Docker build reads the Docker file and create image. Basic syntax for Docker build is docker build -t image name tag and dot here. For example, if we are having a user service application, then how it's going to be docker build t user service 1.0 and dot here. Let's understand each part from this command. What is this -t? T stands for tag. It is for giving your image name. Here, create an user service image with version 1.0. If you don't use the T without this tag, it will create image, but it will give a random ID and which is inconvenient. So this dot means use the current directory as the build context. So it is going to use the current directory as the build context. Now what is this build context? Suppose this is your project structure for user service, and whenever you are executing the build command, Docker send entire current folder to the Docker engine, and the folder is called build context. So the virtual presentation will be like this. Here is our current folder. It will go to the Docker engine. Then it will read the Docker file. After reading the Docker file, then it will build the image. Then why we need this build context? Imagine your Docker file contains like this. Copy the target user service jar to the app.jar. So this is going to be your location where the jar file is exist in your project. And Docker must have the access for this folder so that only it will copy that jar file, right? How it will find it? Because you send the current directory with dot as a build context. Without this, Docker will not able to know where the file is. So that's why we need the build context. Build our first image. First of all, we are going to create a Docker file. Then inside the Docker file, we will just write from nginx and we'll run the command docker build t my first nginx image. Then we'll give a 1.0 version and we'll give the dot here. We'll see whether the image is getting created or not. Here is one folder, and first we'll check whether any image are exist in my local file or not. Docker images. As you can see, I don't have any image in my local repository. Now we'll create a Docker file here, new text file, but there should not be any extension, right? Docker file. Yes, we don't want any extension. Now we are going to write the Docker file content as from create the image from the nginx server. Save it and we'll open the command from here. We'll try to build the image docker build t my first Nginx. Then we are going to give the version 1.0 and here dot. Okay, let's see. As you can see, it started building the image. Okay, the image has been created. We'll check in our local repository. Images are there on the created image is there or not. As you can see, is at my first Nginx image has been created in my local. The version is 1.0 version. What happened internally when we build that image? First of all, it will read the Docker file. Then it will execute the from. Then it will create the first layer. Then it will execute the working directory. Then it will again create the second layer. After that, the image is ready. Don't have to worry about this. Why after every execution, one layer is getting created. We'll study this in next lesson. Please just know how it's internally work. Now we will see a real Spring Boot example. If we are having a user service project and inside the root folder we have the Docker file and the target we are having the jar. Now the Docker file contains these things. Now when we build the image with the command docker build, so the results will be the Docker image will contains Java 21 and a Spring Boot application, Spring Boot jar file, then it will have the startup command, this one. Now the image has been generated. Anyone can easily just run docker run user service 1.0 and it will create the container and run the application. Here I am going to introduce something called docker build cache. Suppose you are having a Docker file and you build the application. Later you build it again, but without changing anything. So Docker will say it will use the cache. Why the Docker will use the cache? Because it will remember whatever you have executed before, all those information it will remember and it will reuse the previous result instead of repeating the work. Because of reusing the previous result and remembering thing, the build will be much faster. We'll explore more about this in the upcoming lessons. Let's see some production best practices. Always use meaningful image names and version tag. In real project, the names actually include the service name and version. So any issue will come, you can roll back to your previous version or whatever version you have needed. It is easy to roll back to any of the version.